Hey everyone, welcome back to the Young Adult Podcast here at Harbor Point Church. We are so excited to be back with you today with episode 8. We are continuing the discussion of testimonies. We're going on from part 1 over to part 2 now. Last week we had the discussion of testimonies, why they're important to our own lives, why they're important to sharing the gospel, and just why God loves them so much. In the downtime we had before starting this, Lexi had brought up a fantastic point of just that we don't really normalize testimonies as much. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to start to normalize that. Sharing our testimony is a fantastic way to reach out to people who have no idea who God even is. And so by us sharing our testimony, we allow them to enter into what we've seen God do in our own lives in hopes that they get to experience that as well. And so today we are going to be sharing our own testimonies with you guys, so you guys get to hear a few glimpses of what our different testimonies look like and how you can start to form your own testimony too. Of course, we don't want you guys to copy these by any means, but you might find some similarities in your own life that you could say, yeah, God did work in that. And you can start to build up your testimony through that as well. So we want the opportunity to be able to share our own testimonies with you guys. And again, in hopes that you get to hear from us and maybe find some resemblance or something like that, and where you get to start to build up your own testimony. So with that, we're going to get into it. So I'm going to be sharing my own testimony first. But yeah, we hope that you guys get some stuff out of this. Bear with us a little bit, just because these things might be a little bit hard. You guys aren't going to be perfect in coming up with your testimonies right off the bat. It's taken us a while for us to even come up with these testimonies ourselves. Just seeing what God has done in our own lives. There's crazy amounts, so to be able to file that down, it gets pretty tough. So we were able to get that down, and we're going to share with you guys. So with that, I'll go ahead and start sharing. But anyways, so my testimony kind of starts off with, first off, sharing that I grew up in a very Christian home. My family always brought me to church. I went through youth group in high school and junior high and all that. I just always went through church. I just grew up with that. And so when it came time to go to college, that's kind of where things started to change a little bit. When I entered into college, my very early on in freshman year, I didn't really have the motivation to continue on my faith. Of course, growing up, my faith had basically been my parents' faith. It hadn't really become mine as much. I got baptized around 13 years old or 14, something like that. But other than that, I really hadn't made my faith my own. And so along with that, my relationship with God wasn't really there. I hadn't really seen God work in my life very much. Of course, we had those special moments in worship times and stuff like that. But other than that, I really hadn't had much of, I guess, face-to-face with God. And so again, when it came time to college, I really didn't have much motivation to continue that on. It took me about 3 weeks before I even got the push to really start to maybe find a Christian community and what that looked like. And so I eventually did. I found a group called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship in Flagstaff. And through that, I found some amazing friends and great mentors. And they kind of started my journey back onto that faith track. But if I had never began that, who knows where I'd be today. But with that, within InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, I was able to start to just see God work in different ways in my life. For the first year, it had looked like, me starting to build up my relationship with God on my own. The year after that, I became a leader with InterVarsity, and even that year, I was at a fall conference in about September, October of that year, and during that time, it was all about saying yes to what God had for you. And that weekend, I had prayed that, what was it that God was asking of me, and what did He want me to say yes to? And eventually it came down to God just saying, hey, I want you to go into ministry. And I said yes to that. And I said, God, show me what you want me to do with that, and show me where you want to, direct my attention into that. And so I said yes. And moving forward after that year, God was just starting to really show me where He wanted me to be. He gave me opportunities to lead different things in His ministry, and get the chance to just experience what ministry really looked like. And I fell instantly in love with that. And then the years after, it was just constantly God just giving me bigger and better things for ministry, and continuing on to show me that, yeah, this is exactly where I should be. And with that, it was just so awesome to see that just because my yes from God became this big elaborate plan with him. And it was so awesome just to see that he was really working in my life. It even got to the point where my senior year, I was leading my own division of the ministry, which was a pretty crazy experience in itself and really gave me that experience of leading a team. But then also there was a small group that I got to lead that invited me to not only just reach out to one single dorm where we were reaching out to, maybe 50 to 100 people, but actually reaching out to about 12 dorms, reaching out to over 1,500 freshmen in over 750 dorms, which was in itself pretty crazy to be able to get that experience. But all of those things was because I said yes to God. And to this day, that's a big part of my testimony, was just stepping out of my comfort zone, saying yes to what God had for me and continuing to follow him. In that, he kept on giving me stuff to build and trust in him. And of course, it wasn't easy by any means. There's many points where, my faith wasn't fantastic and I didn't fully trust what God was doing. But at the same time, he always showed me things to say, you know what, he's really working and I have to continue following him no matter what. Because what he's doing in my life is way, way better than what I could ever experience on my own. And so a lot of it just had to do with following and trusting him. And to this day, it was the best decision of my life, because now I'm sitting in this position of being a ministry director for you guys. And it has been one of the best experiences of my life. I couldn't have asked for anything else from him, And so all because of one single yes, God showed me this elaborate plan. And it came into being this experience like no other. And so I'm so thankful for that. And of course, again, it wasn't easy. It wasn't always that fun, but in the end, it was definitely worth it. And so that's a little bit of my snippet of my testimony. Of course, I have many other versions of my testimony that get to kind of show different other things that I had going on in my life. But I felt like, this is one of the bigger ones. God worked in my life through college. And I hope for you guys, maybe that's something that you need to hear too, that, you're just waiting on God to move in your life. I encourage you guys to keep trusting in him though. And I encourage you guys to keep following him through this. Of course, you might not see the fruit of what's happening right now, but later down the line, it will come. You just have to keep trusting in him and keep having faith that, whatever God is doing, those things are in the works and they are coming. So that's my testimony. But yeah.
I'm glad you said yes, because if you didn't say yes, we couldn't be friends, and then I wouldn't have as many friends,
right?
And then you wouldn't be here, and I'd be sad. So I'm really glad you said yes.
I'm glad I said yes too, Dorian. All because I said yes, we became friends. It's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Lexi, I know you are up for your testimony, so we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I want to say thank you for sharing your testimony. That was awesome, and awesome to hear even just a piece of what God has done in your life. I think it's funny, while you were talking, I was kind of reflecting on my testimony and reflecting on my life in general, and I was just sitting and thinking, there are so many avenues that I could take to tell my testimony, and I think that's sort of an overwhelming feeling, but the first feeling that I just feel sitting here is honestly just so overwhelmingly blessed by the Lord. The fact that I can sit here and say that I can see so many different moments in my life that God had his hand. I'm grateful that I'm sitting here and pondering oh, where should I take this? Because I can see so many moments where God has moved. I'm just grateful that the Lord has shown up for me in that way.
Awesome.
Yeah, my testimony, I think it's a pretty complex one. I would say that it started out, I grew up in a home that was Christian. I wouldn't say that it was particularly one that was following Jesus, but I would say that we went to church and we prayed before we ate. And I would say that we loved the aesthetic of our Christian family. Internally, I grew up in a pretty emotionally abusive home. And that was something that I always felt in my heart, I could sense anger and frustration with us that I didn't sense in other families. And so it was always hard for me growing up to go to church and feel known and feel like a part of a community that didn't really know us well, just knew the way we fronted well. And so in that, I think I had a hard time feeling known. And so as I grew up and got older, more was revealed in my family, and my parents ended up getting divorced. And when they got divorced, pretty much from that moment on, I kind of just lit up with anger. I just became kind of a little fireball, which I've always been like a little bit of a stronger personality. But my strength turned into anger, I would say. And so I think one of my better qualities turned into one of my weaker ones quickly. And I pushed a lot of people away. And so I just became very bitter. I actually ended up moving states after my parents got divorced, and I felt very alone. And so that feeling of not feeling known kind of translated into, now I don't have any of my friends. I was in middle school at the time, so you're already feeling awkward and kind of bouncy and weird. And then you're not known by anyone. And I think I wasn't, and I was angry. So I kind of just I don't even know how else to describe it other than I kind of just went like this. Like I just closed myself off from a lot of things and people. And I got really, really angry with God, of just feeling like, God, like I thought like I had everything and now I have nothing. And even though I could see that like my home was abusive and what we had wasn't real, I couldn't stop from feeling like everything I knew and loved got taken from me. And so at the time, I couldn't see it as a blessing, because I was like, everything I love is destroyed.
Right.
And so for a couple of years, I pretty consciously walked away from the Lord. I went to a Christian school. And so I was kind of immersed in it every day, where I'd learn Bible verses, took Bible courses. I was on worship team for chapels during the week, and I talked the talk, and I loved to go into Bible class and fight my teachers. And when they would say like, oh, well, this, and this about God, I loved to be the kid who sat in the back of the class and played devil's advocate. It just brought me joy, and it honestly filled up that angry hole that I had in me. It just like allowed it to overflow and pour out to people. And I was searching so desperately for a way out, because as that continued, I was just immersed in my own sin. So my anger was horrible. So inward, I was bad. Outwardly, I was making a lot of poor choices. I was rebelling. I was sneaking out a lot. I was drinking. I was doing things I wasn't supposed to do, because I was just looking for something to hold on to. And so I saw that, and I saw that destruction. I had really, really toxic relationships in high school, where I would date a lot of people and ruin it because I had never seen a healthy relationship, and basically just got buried by myself. And it was kind of really sad, because what went from my heartbreak of other people's sin turned into my heartbreak of my own. And so I could no longer blame my issues on my family problems. It was now all of the choices that I had made. And I was overcome by the sadness that I felt by that. And I got pretty depressed. And I actually, I ended up attempting suicide when I was 16. And when I did that, nobody knew. And I chose not to tell anyone, because I didn't want them to feel the weight that I felt of my sin. I didn't want them to feel burdened by sadness. I just wanted it to be over. So I attempted suicide, and I ended up like waking up and feeling like nothing happened to me. And I'm not going to describe what I did, but I should not be alive. And when I woke up, I felt fine. I didn't have any physical ailments. I didn't have anything wrong with me. And I remember waking up and feeling like, if I'm here and I'm okay, that can only be God. Like that can only be because God wants me here. And so I remember that morning, I actually got my Bible out, and I have a prayer that I still have in a journal written down. And it says, okay, God, I've tried everything else and nothing else has brought me joy. And I'm so tired. I can't do anything else. And so that was the end of my school year, my sophomore year. And that entire summer I chose, this is kind of weird, but I chose to isolate myself. And my church had a morning worship service that they did every morning. And so every morning I would drive to my church and I would do whatever I needed to do to worship the Lord. So sometimes I'd lay on the floor and cry, and sometimes I would stand with my hands raised. But different mornings meant different things. And that whole summer, like, I didn't hang out with any friends. I prayed for relationships to mend. And when I got back to school the next year, I remember, I'll never forget, a teacher came up to me on the first day of school and they said, there's something different in you. And I don't know what it is, but I am so excited to see light back in your eyes. And so ever since then, I mean, naturally there's been other things that have been hard in life, and I've tried to navigate through them, but I've decided to pursue Jesus and pursue him, knowing that he was the one who saved me and that he pursued me the whole time. And so, after that, I really I learned I had a heart for ministry, and I learned that I wanted to share what God had done in my life, saving my life physically, but also internally and personally. And so ever since then, it's just been a pursuit of how can I tell others about what God has done. And I have a heart for students. And so I'm super excited that I get to work in student ministry, because I know that was the hardest time of my life. And I just want to be able to shed some light for them that things get better, and that this isn't it. This isn't what God had intended for us. So let's look forward and let's move on towards Jesus, because we only move towards God. And so that knowing on the other side of my pain, just the eagerness that I have in running towards Jesus. I just want to bring as many people as I can alongside me. And so that's kind of been my pursuit ever since. And I know I'll never get to a place where I'm I've arrived to understanding life. I still have things that bring me deep pain, but I have a Savior who fills every crack of my heart. And so no matter where I'm at, it's just learning to be in deeper pursuit of him. And I'm super grateful for the life that I have and the ability to share it with other people. So that is kind of my testimony. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being so vulnerable and
seriously
talking about something that's not easy.
Yeah. I mean, you guys know this. I'm just going to be honest. It was we started recording before, and I got really nervous, and so we had to start again. But I'm glad that I did, because I think I wanted to share. I wanted to be real, and I wanted people to hear really, because there are other things, but that is something that has moved in my life. And I know that's a lot of people's stories. And so I want people to know they're not alone. That pain is something that even people who love Jesus and who work in ministry and who experience God's goodness, pain is something that we experience too.
Yeah. Well, awesome. That's super awesome. And I'm really glad that you shared that with us.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm glad we restarted.
Me too.
Well, awesome. Dorian, are you ready to go?
That's going to be hard to follow up. Okay. Let's
hey,
try
again,
this.
just as always,
I want to hear what God's done.
Yeah, we want to hear what God has done in your own life, but also we're not trying to top each other with each of our testimonies. We've all gone through different things in our lives, but of course, our own stories is what makes us us. Not trying to top other people's stories. We're not trying to top who has the best testimony by any means.
True.
Of course, each one of our testimonies.
Just a competition, anyways.
Well, each one of our own testimonies are going to reach other people that their other stories might not be able to reach. So, just again, just so you guys know. All right, Dorian, why don't we hear what you have to say?
Okay. Well, that's kind of convenient, because what I'm going to talk about is really both of yours put together with a little Dorian spin on it. So let's see what happens. But basically, my parents were missionaries. They were out in the field doing like a bunch of stuff, had a little bonus baby halfway through their work. So like, I can't say they're my earliest memories, but the things I can claim to remember as my earliest memories are in Papua New Guinea, out like being missionaries and stuff. And there was a lot of complications surrounding like my infancy or something. I was supposed to be a stillborn. Like a lot of stuff happened with my mom. Wasn't supposed to have a kid. And then I was born, but I was born with pneumonia. And the doctors gave me like 2 weeks to live or something. Mm-hmm. Screw you, doc. But can I say
off.
Okay. Yeah. So like, it's just all those ideas ingrained in me, this idea that like, I'm a mistake, I don't belong, just this cosmic fluke or something, you know? And as time went on, like my parents forced me to go to Sunday school and I just hated it. The only reason I agreed to go was because I was promised a donut. Like the only, that was even close. Like I hated it so much. And by the time I got into 6th grade, I decided that like, this God guy can't be real. Like I can't hate myself this much if he truly loves me and all that stuff. But what had been also going on is I was on a swim team since I was 9 years old. And I had this great group of guys around me. But as we got into middle school in like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, like we all started changing. That's how humans are. And like a few of us became almost completely different people. And it got to the point where I was completely shoved out of the group for really no apparent reason. But it's just my teammates, the guys who were supposed to be closest to me, just all of a sudden hated me, which was really confusing for a 13-year-old. So just don't do that to people. It sucks. But like, basically, a friend gave me this advice, like, if you want your teammates to respect you, you have to outperform them in every way so that they have no choice but to respect you. So that, like, I took that, that's not the best advice to give to a middle schooler. Give a little bit better advice. But I took that into heart, and I worked my butt off, like, as hard as I could, trying to become the fastest guy, like the most talented, smartest, everything I could to just be better than these guys, to get them to like me. And it seemed like the more I did that, the more they hated me. Because then jealousy kicked in. And then when we started like dating girls and stuff, it just got worse and worse. And all these things kept snowballing. And I remember having a meltdown freshman year where like I just curled up in a ball and started crying. And it's like, what is going on? And at that time, I'd been to like a summer camp or a winter camp. So I knew there was this God guy. But it was more of like putting on an image. Didn't really consider a personal relationship. Like I like learning about the Bible. And talking about God was cool, but I didn't apply it to my life. It didn't feel real. And more time went on and things just kept getting worse and worse. And bad relationship, abusive parents, bad grades in school, just so many things kept snowballing where eventually I tried to take my own life as well in October of 2017, my junior year. And it didn't work out. So Lexi, you and I got that going. We're not the best at that. Good thing to be proud of. But I remember waking up the day after and I opened my Bible and I'm just flipping through it and I come to John chapter 11. And it's the story of Jesus and Lazarus. And the premise of it is Lazarus gets sick and Jesus lets him die. And like I remember reading that and being so confused and angry. Then I read a little further and I got to John chapter 11, verse 35. Shortest verse in the Bible. It just says Jesus wept. And I read that the day after attempting suicide, and I just broke down in tears. Like, I don't cry much. I think chlorine burned out my tear ducts, but I cried in that moment like I never have before. Like, it was just sobbing, like rolling back and forth on my bed. And like, it just came clear to me, the love that Christ has. And like, I read that and I kept reading on, and I ended up reading the whole gospel about his betrayal by Judas. And then like going through and being crucified, which is probably the worst way to die in human history. It's just, and he did all that voluntarily. Like he could have stopped at any time, but he went through with it to prove his love and to get back in relationship with us. And it like everything in that moment just clicked. Like I've been a Bible nerd for years. So everything I was reading about the Bible, trying to learn about it, it finally made sense. And like that is the definitive moment in my life where I can say things turned around. Like I started finding joy. My relationship with my teammates got better, not because they liked me anymore, but because I had this mindset of like, they don't need to like me. Jesus does. So I'm going to have as much fun as I can. And that was kind of how I went through junior and senior year of swim. And like things started, for me, they started working out on my end. But things in life didn't get easier because after that, I dislocated my shoulder and lost a chance at D1 college swimming. And then I got migraines for like 6 weeks that took me out of high school swimming. So like my entire life path to that point was completely derailed. And once again, I felt like lost and purposeless. And I withdrew into myself and I got really angry, and it ruined a lot of relationships for me. But like I always kept going back to that moment of John chapter 11, just the incredible love that Jesus has. Like it just blows me away every single time. And it just that love he has for us, the fact that he voluntarily gave himself up, it blows my mind. And then the whole thing with Lazarus, how he let Lazarus die because he knew what was going to come out of that pain was going to be so much better. He let Lazarus go through the pain because the pain's going to make him a better person, and it's going to allow more people to know Jesus. And I think that's a lot of what ties into my story. Oh man, God's just been so good. And like life has really, really been easy. My parents have gotten divorced. I lost college swimming, like battling a lot of mental struggles. I'm not the best student at school. And that's always like, so it's just been a lot of factors, but because of what God taught me so many years ago, it's helped me get through this and rely on him more and more and more, to the point where like, if I go a day without thinking about God, it's like the worst day of my life. Like I can't, the moment I take God out of the picture, everything just falls apart again. Like he's brought me so far to the point I have no choice. Like someone asked me once why I was a Christian, and the answer was, I've seen too much. I've felt too much. God's given me too much to go back. Yeah, that's about it.
Well, again, I appreciate you being vulnerable. That's again a really tough story to go through, but at the same time, it's exactly who God made you to be, and that was, a defining moment for you. Just like you talked about last week of, there was the before and then now there's the after, the beauty that God has created through you now. It's really, it shows in your daily life. We've been able to see it. And of course, we love every bit of you.
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of a know-it-all. We'll see about that.
Almost every bit of you, I guess, but
it's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
One real quick, every single time I read this, it blows my mind. Favorite Bible verse is John chapter 11, verse 35, for reasons that I just said. Mm-hmm. In my Bible, John chapter 11, verse 35, it happens on page 1135. I don't believe in coincidence, but like, that's cool.
That is cool.
Almost like it was divinely inspired.
Almost.
Well, awesome. Well, again, I appreciate you guys both sharing your stories. Of course, for those of you listening, your testimonies might be similar to ours, or they might be totally different. Of course, we go through different things, different trials, different happy moments, different sad moments, whatever it is. We go through different things that makes it our defining moment. Of course, there's always beauty after it. We just have to go through some pain sometimes, or some hardships, just to get to, where God wants us to be. We have to trust in what he's doing, that it's going to create something beautiful in the end. And so I think that's for all of our stories that we've been through. We've all gone through some, of course, some different things for sure, but in the end it was for something beautiful. And so, I think that's something that we can all resemble with our testimonies. And so I hope this was great for you guys. I hope you guys took something out of this, that you got to hear our testimonies, and maybe you are struggling to come up with your own testimony. So maybe this gave you some motivation or some input, or whatever it is that might help you out to create your own testimony and your own story. And so we're very excited to hear some of these. Tonight, after the podcast goes live with our virtual gathering at 7, we're going to be talking through some of your guys' testimonies. And so we're super excited to hear Of course, you guys don't have to share if you guys don't quite feel comfortable or you're not quite ready for it. But if you are, we would love to hear them. Of course, some of the other people in our virtual gathering might hear your testimony and say, "Wow, I really resemble with that," or that's something I really needed to hear. So I hope you get the courage and the confidence to share your testimony with us after this. And so. This is going to conclude our 2-part series on testimonies. And so again, I hope you guys got some out of this. I think it was super fun for us to discuss this as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we, again, are excited to hear what you guys have to say about this. And, we can't wait to hear your testimonies. And so next week we'll be going on to something new, but in the meantime, we can't wait to hear your testimonies and help you out if you guys need any. So that's going to conclude our episode 8 on testimonies. So we'll see you guys after this in our virtual gathering. And if not, we'll see you guys next week with the next podcast. So see you guys.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Love you all.